Welcome back to Media and Society. So the Jacob Zuma Foundation accuses advocate Billy Downer of having leaked the former president's medical record. It then says News 24 journalist Karen Moore didn't get them ethically or perhaps even legally, and they are pursuing a private prosecution. The National Prosecuting Authority, or NPA, says it will not prosecute as it found the accusations baseless. But let's take this discussion further and really understand the parties involved in this one, and also the perspective of the media where it comes to publishing even medical records of our political leaders. We're joined by Mzwanele Manyi, the spokesperson of the Jacob Zuma Foundation, as well as Adrian Basson, editor-in-chief at News 24. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming in. And Manyi, I want to start with you and say, you know, as soon as we heard of the news of the private prosecution being pursued, obviously you're on various platforms talking about why this was an important decision for former President Jacob Zuma to pursue it. Let's hear that again, right? Particularly where the involvement of Karen Moore then gets added into it as a media practitioner.
Yeah, hi Naledi and your viewers. I'm glad that you've given us this opportunity because there's been a lot of mispeddling of wrong information. I mean, even in your intro, you also talk about the medical records. That's secondary. That's probably aggravating circumstances. The issue here, in fact, I had asked your producer to flight the actual section of the law that we're dealing with. Because what we're dealing with here, we're dealing with the flouting of the law, Section 41, subsection 6 of the NPA Act, which prohibits disclosure of any information to any person. Now, this is very important, choice of words. Disclosure of any information to any person. We are not here, from where we sit, from our perspective, dealing with a journalist. We are just dealing with any person that received information irregularly. This is the issue we're dealing with. That it happens to be Karen Moore, it's just incidental. The law says any person, you see, if the law had excluded Karen Moore, had excluded media, the law would have said any person except. There's no exception. The fact that you have information with you as the National Prosecuting Authority, which you should not disclose without the permission of the NDPP. Should you do that, then it means you're flouting the law. It's as simple as that. This case should be open and shut. Let
me ask you this, though. Where are the limitations of that? And I'm going to stick with you for this, because as a media practitioner, my job is to collect information. That's lawfully. My job. At what point am I crossing a line?
We are crossing the line at a point when the information is not ready for public consumption for whatever reason. This is why, for instance, sometimes you'd have what would be called an embargoed debriefing,
yes,
as it were, to be able to. But then when that happens, care is taken that the law is not broken in all of that process. Now, in this situation, the law is broken. In this situation, the law has been broken. And by the way, there is no argument that the law has not been broken. There's some rationalization as to why they broke the law. So the only discussion we'll be having in court is in mitigation, where Downer does not deny that he broke the law, does not deny that this happened. Karen does not deny that he received the information before anybody else. I mean, the SABC, a public broadcaster, if anyone needed to be taken into confidence, in my view, would have been the national public broadcaster. Why would you just single out one News 24 person? Why would you do this? It just shows the malice in this thing, because they needed to push a particular narrative. If the interest was in the public interest and all of that, then surely all media people would have been brought in. In fact, I'm actually surprised that SABC is not livid about this. SABC should be saying, Downer, how can you call only Karen Moore? But SABC seems to be happy with this. I don't know whether it's because you are captured as SA media, as SABC, that you're not even angry about this, that information is just given to Basson, Basson's people and all of that. So, but that's not the issue for us. It's the issue for yourselves. The issue for us, we're a law-abiding citizen. We are saying the law says no person shall disclose to any other person. Forget that she's a journalist. So for us, and this, we must not misconstrue the issue here. We're not dealing with a journalist. We're dealing with any person. That is the basis of our argument.
Yeah, Adrian, let me bring you in here. Mr. Mangi essentially saying what is unfolded here and what we're seeing was clear malice on the part of Downer and Karen Moore. What is your response to that?
By the way, before he responds, this guy is a serial offender. Just before, Adrian, sorry about that. This guy, by the way, is a serial offender. You know, if you understood...
Which guy?
Downer.
Yes.
He's a serial offender. This guy is not doing it for the first time. You know, if you understood Xhosa, would say, indotenganas fuba, fubin.
He can't hold anything in.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to bring it. We need to bring it. But I've given you a chance, Mr. Mangi. Please, let's have a balanced conversation, please. Quickly, please.
30 seconds. He did this for the first time with a Mare and Lebohang with Sam Soul. He has done this. So he's a serial offender. He's done this with Sam Soul with a Mare and Lebohang. Also, if you look at the book of Andrew Feinstein, Push 220, he even disclosed that they were going to charge Zuma even before. So this guy,
let's have a balanced conversation, Mr. Mangi, please. Adrian, I asked you a question there and I said, well, are we seeing intentional malice on the part of Karen Moore and Billy Downer here, where there is an unfair advantage perhaps, and that's where I really want to bring it in and say there is an unfair advantage that Karen Moore is given over other journalists in the country by being given information that other journalists really cannot access, and laws have been broken. What do you say to that?
Morning, Naledi. Thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity. I think that the only malice in this case is from Mr. Zuma. It is very clear if you look at the merits of this case that it's an absolute nonsense case. Court papers is the issue at heart here. Now, we have a ruling in this country which was made by the Supreme Court of Appeal. It's the so-called Sanroll case. That declared all court papers are public records. Every document filed with court is a public record, which means any member of the public, including any journalist, can obtain this document. It is completely normal for journalists in South Africa to ask parties to any court case for their court papers. It happens every day, and this should not be a surprise to any journalist who's covered a court case. The facts of this matter is that, firstly, I'm very interested also to hear that Mr. Mani is now saying it's not about the medical records, because that was the drum they've been beating for many months, and they know it's false because it wasn't Mr. Zuma's medical records. In fact, it was one doctor's note of one page, which they themselves, their own legal team, submitted to court and placed in the public record. So they've realized they can no longer rely on that argument that News 24, any journalist for that matter, disclosed Mr. Zuma's medical records because they themselves put it in the court, and it was a doctor's note, it wasn't medical records. But just to come back to the issue of court papers, the facts of the matter are very clear. Karen Moore has been covering the Zuma trial for more than 50 years, since Mr. Zuma was charged for the first time. She's the journalist who's been covering it for the longest time, and she has immense institutional memory and background on this case, which gives us some clue on why Mr. Zuma is specifically targeting her. She was covering this case. She heard that the state, that there was going to be an application for a postponement because Mr. Zuma was moved from the escort prison where he was incarcerated after his conviction. He was moved to a hospital in Pretoria. She then asked the parties involved for the court papers, and it was emailed to her late the afternoon before the hearing was going to commence in court. With the very clear understanding that she cannot publish these papers. Now, what's also interesting and what's curious about this case is the communication between her was with Advocate Andrew Breitenbach, who is a private advocate in private practice, who was acting on behalf of Mr. Downer in this case. She was never communicating directly with Mr. Downer. She has no communication with Mr. Downer about this matter at all. But Karen Moore asked for the court papers. It was given to her. My understanding is after it was emailed to the court. At the time we had COVID, there wasn't any physical activity at court, and documents were served via email, which we will argue in court clearly shows that documents were already in the ambit of the court, but with the clear understanding still that we can only publish stories from these court papers the next morning when they were filed in the court's ambit. The next morning, Mr. Zuma also filed his court papers at court with this doctor's note, and we then published a story about 2 hours after that was filed. So, Naledi, our case and our view is very strongly that this is a nonsense case. This is a criminal case. This is not Mr. Zuma suing Karen on News 24 or taking us to the Ombudsman. They are asking the court to imprison a journalist. And this is a very, very serious and dangerous moment for media freedom in this country, when a former president can ask that a journalist be imprisoned for essentially doing a job, even if they legitimately believe, which we don't think is the case, but even if they believe she did something wrong. Yeah. To ask for imprisonment of a journalist for doing a job is really, really aggravating. It is a dangerous sentiment. We've heard all the media freedom institutions in this country condemning this move this week, and we will defend it and defend Karen Moore to the hilt.
Okay, so I'm going to bring that back to you, Mr. Mangi.
As you do, can you ask your producer to please flight the lawyer, because he's talking nonsense here. Can you just place the law so that you can talk facts? He's just talking and talking.
Well, okay, but let me ask you this.
No. Can we have this thing on here? Can you just please put it on the screen, because I've asked for it, so that you can talk facts, because the law says any document as well. So it makes light of the fact that it was this and it was not that. Yet the law is very clear. Any information, any document. So whether it was a one-pager or a half-a-pager is any document.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Mangi. Please allow me please to ask you a question here and say, it certainly is one thing where you've got the former president and the foundation perhaps taking on Downer about the legal elements of this case. That there is a legal issue. I'm concerned perhaps around whether or not the involvement of a media practitioner does something for media freedom in the country. What do you say to that? Let's focus particularly on them, because my show is about media.
Okay.
I'm not here to argue the merits of the case.
Okay, good. I think the very first thing that you should do as the media is to go and try and go for an amendment of the law to make exclusion for yourselves, because right now the law does not recognize media. The law does not that particular section of the law does not recognize the issue that you're trying to bring. The law simply says you shall not do this, as it were, to any other person. It does not make an exclusion and say, except if you're a journalist, except if you're a media. So this is what we're dealing with, a narrow issue of what the law requires, the behavior that is required by the law, you know. So, and also, it's not President Zuma that says be in prison. It's the law. It's subsection 7 of the law that says so. 41 subsection 7 that says if you contravene this, it's because this is so serious that you can go to jail for 15 years. And the reason for this, it's because the law is trying to protect the integrity of the criminal justice system. Can you imagine, Naledi, if it was you?
How do you feel about media freedom? I really want to hear your position on that, Mr. Mangi. I'm talking specifically about the media and its operations.
Media freedom it's something that we support fully. And in fact, if this was about media freedom, by the way, as I say, there would have been an embargoed debriefing of all media. You can't say media freedom when you just mean Karen. Karen can't constitute media freedom. Media freedom would have meant call everyone, give everyone a fair crack at it. Why is it that on the 10th, the next day, that only then that everybody got to see this, but Karen had an overnight on it.
This is what you asked us to show.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
Just go to B. Where is that thing? Where can I see it?
Here. You can look on that side, yes.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to just show there that, okay, if you read this thing, what shall I read now?
Yeah.
Notwithstanding any other law, just focus on subsection 6. Notwithstanding any other law, no person shall, without the permission of the national director or a person authorized in writing by the national director, disclose to any other person. You see here, there is no exclusion to say to any other person except Karen, to any other person except journalist, to accept media, no such a thing, to any other person. And this is the basis that we're dealing with this. Any information which came to his or her knowledge in the performance of the functions, etc. of the law. That's it. And then B says, the contents of any book or any document or any item in possession of the prosecuting authority. So you can't have Adriana saying, no, it was just a page. It is any document. It is any other item. That's the issue that we're dealing with.
I think
it's an open and shut case.
All right. I'm so upset that I'm out of time. I am genuinely upset that I'm out of time, because this has been a very rich discussion, and I imagine one that's going to continue in the country for a very long time. Adrian, thank you so much for speaking to us. I think last thoughts from you before I let you go, and I've got about a minute here, Adrian.
Yes, just very closely, that Act speaks very clearly to NPA employees, and that's why Mr. Zuma laid a criminal complaint against Billy Downer last year, which was rejected by the NPA. There was never a criminal complaint against Karen Morn. Until this day, Mr. Zuma has not gone to the police to open a complaint. There's not a nollie prosecute certificate against Karen Morn, and that act clearly doesn't speak to journalists or anyone asking for information. So again, I think it's absolutely malicious that Karen Morn has been dragged into this matter. The NPA can speak for themselves. Us, we are speaking up for the media freedom, for the rights of all journalists, and we will defend Karen in this matter.
Thank you so much. But Mr. Zuma is proceeding with the private prosecution.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Okay. Let's leave it there.
Downer is accused number 1, Karen is accused number 2.
Okay, let's leave it there.
And make that
I'm out
case
of
in
time.
court.
I'm out of time. That was an interesting discussion, and certainly one that can continue even on Twitter. Hashtag SABC Media Society. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to my guests, Mr. Mzwanele Manyi, spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation, as well as Adrian Basson, editor-in-chief at News 24. Catch us again next week, Sunday morning rather. Same time, same place. Have yourselves a fabulous Sunday morning.